Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 201. Heather Shepard, the Dixie Deer Classic, Gator Huntin, and the Hunt Club. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
I'm James Flankenbeckler from Open Season TV, and you're about to listen to my favorite podcast, The Big Buck Registry.
This is Josh McDaniel.
And Chris McDaniel.
Shooters Archery here in Linton, Indiana.
And you're about to hear our favorite podcast,
Big Buck Registry. Come on.
This is Shannon Hart from Miss Wild Game, and you're listening to me on my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and I'm really psyched, as I am each and every week, to say thank you for tuning in to the show. We think we got another rocking interview to release here today, and I think you're going to enjoy this. It's with a good friend of ours, and when I say of ours, I mean of me and my good friend Dusty Phillips from Ohio. What's going on, Dusty?
Just enjoying this spring weather, and been doing a little fishing, and finally was able to lay the hammer down on another long beard here in Ohio to tag out last weekend. So it's been a good year, really.
I was going to say, you can officially say tagged out in the turkey woods.
It's the first time I've killed 2 Ohio turkeys in one season, so I'm super excited and give myself a little pat on the back for that.
Wow.
It's quite the challenge here in Ohio. Where I'm at, there's not a whole lot of turkeys, so
right.
I'm pretty honored that I was able to make that happen.
That's awesome. So we can officially say that the entire team at the Big Buck Registry has tagged out during turkey season in their respective states.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
It's been a great year.
Man, we might have to turn this into a turkey hunting podcast.
You never know.
We're killing turkeys. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. I'm so glad you got into turkey hunting. Isn't it a great pastime just as much as so is deer hunting, really, when it comes down to it?
I think it's a lot more fun than deer hunting. Deer hunting is good. I guess you can almost relate to it. Shotgun season, Ohio, maybe. If you're hunting public land or something, you can move around a little bit. But if you can get a gobbler to answer your calls and come into you, I'm telling you, it may be better than deer hunting, really.
There is an excitement that goes along with it. The anticipation as you hear the sounds coming through the woods towards you. You can't hear that with deer. Deer don't call back. You can see antlers, and I think that's a similar experience. But until you see the antlers, you just don't know what's going on. Really, you can't tell what's approaching.
Right. It's just a fun game. If you can get a turkey to play the game, it's unbelievable.
It's exhilarating, and you're right. It is a game. It's a game of strategy and trying to figure out where to go and how to how you're going to get there and to outflank them. And there's a whole chess match at play, and that's what turkey hunting is to me. I mean, I guess all hunting is that way, but it's just where they are typically, so you have to outthink them.
Yeah, for sure. It's super interesting, and it's a challenge. And if you can get the right place at the right time, and man, it'll happen. It's really cool.
I want to read a letter that we got, Dusty, from one of our listeners. Guy's name is Dan, and this is about the tree stand harness program that we have going on. He said, "Hey, Jay, listener of your podcast, and I heard that you say that you are getting more tree stand harnesses for your tree harness program," which is true. We have a few here and some more on the way. I picked up my first climbing tree stand, used it, and it did not come with a harness. I will be hunting out of it for the first time this year, and will be my first time hunting out of a tree stand, so I wanted to do the safe thing and get a harness. So if you are able to spare one, I would greatly appreciate it. I just started hunting last season, so I have been working on getting all the essential gear I need and have not been able to get a harness yet. If you are able to spare one, here's my address. Thanks for all you guys do. Love listening to your podcast and has quickly become one of my favorites. It really helps me get through the long days at my desk at work, wishing I was outside, and not to mention all the good tips and tricks and info has been invaluable as a new hunter. Thanks and God bless, Dan. That's a nice letter.
Yeah, very good. And best of luck, Dan, in the Whitetail Woods. And we look forward to seeing your picture right here on the Big Buck Registry.
Yes, we would gladly post a picture of Dan and his first buck. And we will be shipping out a harness to you, Dan. So we'll get that right out. So if you are in need of a harness, you can shoot me or Dusty an email, j.or.dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. And likewise, if you have harnesses, same thing. Shoot us an email and let us know you have some, and we'll send you an address on where to ship them. Well, that's it for the harness program. This week's guest is a friend of ours who we met through Josh Carney, Heather Shepard. And Heather is, we got to have dinner with Heather, and she's so modest, and she's kind of just quiet about her life, but turns out she's heavily involved with the Dixie Deer Classic down in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's the treasurer and is in line to become the president, and I think she is the first female on the board and will become the first female president of the Dixie Deer Classic. We got to hang out with Heather for quite a while down at SHOT Show in Vegas this year, and she's a pretty razor-sharp gal. You start listening to her talk, and you'll realize that she's got some passion about deer hunting and some skill sets about deer hunting and a toughness to her that you're like, what's this all about? So we set this up. I wasn't sure if she'd say yes, but she did say yes. She said, yes, I'll be on your podcast. So I think she's just a very interesting person, and we are able to capture that on this interview. So we're going to be speaking to Heather Shepard here in just a little bit. But before we get there, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
The Deer News this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, 5 herbicides every deer steward should know. This story was originally featured on the Quality Deer Management website and was written by Brian Grossman. While there are hundreds of different herbicides on the market, most food plot weed control can be handled with just a handful of the most common ones. Here are 5 of those popular herbicides, along with when you'd use each one. Example 1, to kill everything. Glyphosate, commonly referred to by its original trade name as Roundup. Glyphosate is undoubtedly the most common used when it comes to planting food plots. It is a non-selective herbicide, which means that it can potentially kill any plant that it contacts. That, coupled with it being relatively inexpensive, makes it a great choice for killing the existing vegetation in a food plot prior to planting. Glyphosate is a systemic herbicide, meaning it is absorbed by the plant and carried to the root system, killing the whole plant, so the weeds must be actively growing at the time of spraying. Glyphosate does not remain active in the soil, so it will not prevent additional weeds from germinating. Another factor making glyphosate popular for food plots is the availability of certain crops, such as corn and soybeans, in a glyphosate-resistant variety. These are often labeled as quote-unquote Roundup Ready. This allows you to spray glyphosate right over your actively growing corn or soybeans, and only the weeds growing in the plot will be negatively impacted. As with any herbicide, be sure to use glyphosate according to label guidelines, as misuse or overuse can result in glyphosate resistance among weeds. Category 2, if grasses are an issue. Sethoxydim is most commonly known by the trade name Post, but that may be available under a variety of others, Post Plus, Vantage, Sethoxydim, G-Pro, etc. Unlike glyphosate, sethoxydim is a selective herbicide, meaning that it only controls specific weeds. In this case, the herbicide targets grasses while not damaging broadleaf plants. It is also a systemic herbicide, so it must be sprayed on young, actively growing grass weeds, and it will not remain active in the soil after spraying. In food plot plantings, sethoxydim is commonly used to control grasses in legume and brassica plantings. Clethodim is very similar to sethoxydim in that it is a grass-specific selective herbicide. It is often purchased under the trade names Arrest Max, Arrow, or Select. It performs similarly to Sethoxydim. However, Clethodim seems to do a better job of controlling Johnson grass. So if Johnson grass is a problem in your plot, you may want to opt for the Clethodim. If not, you can base your herbicide selection between two on price and availability. Because of the way Sethoxydim and Clethodim work, they are relatively slow killers, often taking several weeks to completely knock back the grasses in a food plot. Don't get discouraged when you don't see obvious results in the first 2 weeks. Category 3, if broadleaves are a problem. 2,4-D. If you are trying to grow a plot with grasses such as wheat, rye, oats, grain, sorghum, or corn, and you have an issue with broadleaf weeds, then 2,4-D may be your best option. 2,4-D is a common selective herbicide that controls broadleaf weeds without harming grasses, as long as it is used according to label recommendations. 2,4-D is readily available at most farm supply stores and co-ops under a variety of trade names. Like the other herbicides discussed in this article, it is systemic, so weeds need to be actively growing when they are sprayed. While 2,4-D breaks down relatively quickly, it can be effective in the soil for 1 to 4 weeks, so keep this in mind if you will be planting in broadleaf species in the area soon after spraying. 2,4-D-B, which is Butarac. While 2,4-D-B, or Butarac as it is sometimes referred to, is very similar to 2,4-D with one very important difference. It will not kill certain legumes, such as many common species of clover and alfalfa, when applied correctly. This makes it a great choice for controlling broadleaf weeds in pure stands of clover or in mixes of clover and cereal grains such as wheat, rye, and or oats. Do not use 2,4-D-B if the mix contains brassicas, chicory, or other broadleaf forbs, as they will likely be damaged or killed. Summary. Controlling weeds in a food plot is a common issue and one that often requires a multifaceted approach for the best results. The key to being prepared is knowing what weeds you are likely to encounter in your specific area and having a plan of attack ready when those issues arise. While these 5 herbicides will handle a lot of common food plot weed problems, there are plenty of other herbicides out there. It is best to consult with a professional when possible and always follow the recommended rates and application directions on the herbicide label. Driver attempts CPR on deer in Chisago County, Minnesota. This story was originally featured on the KARE Channel 11 website. The Chisago County Sheriff's Office received a report of a car versus deer crash on Interstate 35. The responding deputy arrived to find the driver of the car in the ditch attempting CPR on the deer. Strange but true, according to a tweet from the sheriff's office. The driver's efforts to resuscitate the deer were unsuccessful and not something the department condones. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here's Heather Shepard.
Heather Shepard, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Good. How are you, Jay? Thanks for having me.
We're just like to have you on. We got to be kind of good buddies out there in Vegas, and I thought this was most appropriate. And I know you're a little quiet when we're just hanging out, and it took me a little while to get you to tell me about yourself. But when I did, my God, the whole world opened up. I couldn't believe that. Here I am talking to a person that was in charge of the Dixie Classic, and wow. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, definitely.
I tell you, who she hung out with in Vegas, I don't know about that guy.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
He's a little nervous for you.
He's bless his heart.
Yeah.
He knows I'm not a big talker or video, TV face. I kind of like to be behind the scenes and reserved.
Right. Exactly. You're so skilled, and you have such a good mindset when it comes to deer and deer hunting that it's only fair to the world to share you with the world of deer and deer hunting. So I'm psyched that you'd actually said yes.
I appreciate. I thought about it. I thought about saying no to you, Jay.
I believe it. I 100% believe that.
But I'm glad to be on.
Thank you. Well, thank you for doing that. So Heather, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Where's home?
So I am a North Carolina girl, born and raised. I live here in Roseville, North Carolina. I grew up, I would say, pretty much a typical quote-unquote country girl, as you want to say.
Okay.
I've been here since day one. Haven't left. Don't plan on leaving North Carolina. Obviously, I love to travel. I love to get around. But North Carolina is definitely my roots, and this is where I've learned everything and continue to stay.
Gotcha. What do you love about it?
There's so many different things about North Carolina. Where I live, I'm a couple hours away from the beach. I'm a couple hours away from the mountains. We've got all 4 seasons. I mean, it's almost like you can draw a line in the calendar and know when winter, spring, summer, and fall is going to be. And to me, it doesn't get any better than that. You have everything at your hands. So if I literally, like this weekend, a few girls are going to the beach. It's going to take us a couple hours to get there.
Yep.
The next weekend, we're going to get in the razors and drive to the mountains. So it doesn't take a huge planning effort to do what you want to do. And if you want to hunt, different counties or different areas, you've got a wide variety in North Carolina to be able to do that. So.
Gotcha. And so you think you have a winter down there, huh?
Well, now compared to y'all, we don't have a winter, but it gets cold, in my opinion. It gets pretty chilly.
Right.
I actually love the cold. A lot of people around here love the hot and love summer, love the beach. I'm the opposite. I love cold because it means different things to me than it does to them, obviously.
Right.
But I'll get to experience some of your cold temperatures every once in a while, but it is a huge difference. Yes.
Yes, this is climate difference for sure. What is cold to you? Like, what's a cold temperature? What does that feel like?
I would say average, North Carolina cold temperatures would be in the 40s, but cold for me would probably be in the teens. That's
okay.
when it starts getting pretty cold.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's pretty,
you add wind chill factors in there and then
right.
I might become a little bit of a baby, but.
Well, I think we all become babies when it gets down into the, teens and it gets windy and subarctic. Nobody likes that.
Doubt. Oh yeah.
Right. So you called North Carolina home, and it sounds like you like the variety that North Carolina brings. I've been to North Carolina. I enjoy it down there. It's quite a bit warmer than home, but it's got a nice country feel to it. I've always thought it was pretty nice overall.
It does. You've got a lot of countryside to it. But if you want to jump into the city and be a city person, that's right there at you. It's not too far.
Okay, gotcha.
So.
Now, were you introduced to hunting as a child?
I was. I grew up. My daddy is obviously he's my role model. It's funny because you go back to grade school days, and I was the girl that was picked on growing up. I had the classy, sassy, whatever side you want to say. I was a cheerleader, a dancer.
Okay.
Ran track and did all that stuff within school. But on the same aspect of it, I hung out with the guys. I was a tomboy, and I actually got picked on quite a bit because I was the girl that was in the mud or out in the woods or in the sticks, messing around, and that was my spare time. And friends, and we used to have parties. We'd have a pool at our house, and we'd have everybody over, and, all the teams would come over and hang out. And I used to always remember everybody calling my house the cemetery, the dead cemetery, because you'd walk in and there's mounts and deer heads and ducks and turkeys and everything all around our house.
All right.
Growing up. And to me, I mean, obviously it was normal. I knew no other way. And, to them, it was funny. It was ugly. It was hateful. It was, an avenue for them to have name calling and all that good stuff. And I look back at it now, as an adult with my own family in my own house. And I laugh about it because I'm like, look at me now and look at them. And it's just so, going back to what you said, yes, I grew up in it. It wasn't really a choice, so to speak, for me. It was who we were. And, that's what we did on the weekends. We didn't go play and do, birthday parties and all that stuff. Me and my brother would hop in the truck. We'd go to the hunt club. And on Sundays, we'd go to the sport and clay range. And that was an everyday week for us.
Gotcha. So were there people that were disapproving of your lifestyle and disapproving of hunting overall?
100%.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's fascinating because I always think of the South, and I feel like there are no antis down there. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong. There's different views, but you have the South and what most people kind of assume or judge of the South. But then you have the quote unquote Southern girls.
Okay.
And around here, we have a lot of those, and they're the prim and proper and the high dollar, expensive, call themselves, more Southern. But in reality, we used to call it a cult back in the day. Obviously, I don't want to, get into those details, but it can be harsh growing up, as a tomboy. Obviously, nowadays things have changed and it's more open than it used to be. Mm-hmm. But there were some times where, hurtful things were said and I'd brush it off. Obviously, I was one of those, if you don't like, don't look. If you don't want to talk to me, don't talk to me. It's not going to hurt my feelings.
Right.
But
and that's kind of how I feel you are still today. Do you feel like
I am very much still that way?
Yeah. That's kind of what I figured out when we hung out for a little while is that you just kind of go with a stride. You're not, if somebody doesn't have the opinion you do, well, I don't need to hang out with that person. No big
exactly.
Deal. Gotcha. So you called North Carolina home. You've been there for most of your life, and the hunting came from your dad. Like, we talk about your dad a little bit more?
Yeah. So my dad grew up in North Carolina. My whole family is based and raised in North Carolina. He grew up, and they grew up farming. There was a lot of farming in the family, and kind of where they lived was a very open area. He got into a hunting club when he was in, I want to say, his early teens. And we actually are still a part of that hunting club today.
Oh, wow.
And that kind of grew into it. And so all of his friends growing up, we still hunt with. And a lot of them that are still around, they're like additional parents to me, so to speak. I kind of grew up in that community. And it was, you can call my dad right now and ask him any question about any firearm, any animal, what time of day it was, on anything I've pulled the trigger on, my brother's pulled the trigger on. I mean, any of us. And he can tell you the exact story with his eyes closed. I remember the first day I shot my first turkey. He cried and cried and cried. My near broke his gun from throwing it so hard, standing up, trying to run after the turkey. So everything to us, like, those are his milestones. He always said, as a mom, for me, one of the things I'll always remember, obviously, like the back of my hand, is the birth of my child.
Right.
For him, those are important things, but he sees it as your first deer, your first turkey, your first black bear. All those moments to him are moments that make him grin and cry ear to ear. And he still talks about him to this day. You can ask him, one little notion, and the next thing you know, you're sitting down talking to him for about an hour on what I've done. And I know people out there that he's talked to, and I have no idea who they are, and they'll call me randomly and know my whole life. And I'm like, Daddy, you can't tell everybody everything. So needless to say, obviously me and my brother both love hunting. It's what we do. It's who we are. And the fact that we can say that makes him extremely proud. But he's taught me a lot about guns, and he was a master shooter in sport and clays. Like I said earlier, we grew up on Sundays. Every Sunday we were at the sport and clay range, following him, riding around, so he's my right-hand man, I would say.
All right. Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yes.
Where did he get his passion?
I don't know the particular person he got his passion from. There's so many people in his life that's kind of touched him. My granddaddy did a bit. Obviously back in the day, rabbit hunting and coon hunting and dog hunting was a big deal. Dog hunting, deer and dogs went together hand in hand. Nowadays, not so much. That he kind of grew through that, but he traveled with friends, just pretty much meeting with friends and growing up through that. Not a lot of his family, his brothers or sisters, I should say, hunted. So it was just him. It was almost like, this is what I enjoy doing. I want to be outside. He works outside all day, every day. And I think that's kind of how he evolved to it, so to speak. I don't know a particular person you could pinpoint, but. Gotcha.
Do you remember the first weapon you ever shot?
It was a 25-06 Sendero that I actually still shoot today.
No kidding. Was it shooting at the range or in the field?
I believe, I can't tell you pinpoint exactly.
Okay.
That would be my first gun I have shot an animal with.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. I'm sure, it's sentimental to you.
Oh, absolutely. That gun will, like I said, I still take it to the deer woods now.
Gotcha. So being part of a hunting family with a dad that's so passionate about hunting and having hunting in your life all this time and still today, you're deeply involved in all kinds of organizations. What would you say your hunting philosophy is now? Like, what does it mean to you?
That is a question that everybody asks, and it's so hard for me to answer in a way that they want. But the best way for me to do it, because I don't really, it's me. When anybody around here, or a friend looks at me, it goes hand in hand. It's who I am. It's my way of life. But when I leave work or make a plan to go to the woods, whether it's before work, after work, whatever, that's my therapy. That's my friendship with Mother Nature. It's where I can sit collectively, be myself. A lot of times I hunt by myself. So it's my time. It's my me time. So it's just my bond that gets me, honestly, through the days and through the year. It's Mother Nature to me. I love being outdoors. The beauty of it is unreal. The memories, the moments you can share. There's so many different ways to explain how good and how much hunting does for people. The friendships you create, the bonds you create with people, it's uncomparable. It really is. It's just throw yourself out there in the middle of nowhere in the woods and kind of figure it out. And from there, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about nature, about the world, a lot about people and who they are and how they react. And you learn, I mean, I know I just said you learn a lot about yourself, but you really do, how you can cope with your mind, with, reactions and moments and scenarios as they come at you that you're not prepared for.
Right.
I think it just teaches you a lot as a person. It's taught me of obviously where I'm at today and who I am today because of it.
Right. I always found a peace when I was hunting.
It is so peaceful.
It gives me a peace of mind.
So peaceful.
Removes me from the day-to-day world.
Absolutely.
And brings me back down to what life is really all about.
It's funny because my boss always says, I actually just put some more time in, and he said, so are you taking a vacation or are you going hunting? And I told him, I said, Nate,
what?
Hunting is my vacation. Like, one day after 2 years, you're going to get this through your head that is my vacation. Right. That's my time away. And he just laughs at me.
Like, what a silly question that is.
I know.
I don't even matter. If a boss said that to me, I don't know how I'd react.
Right.
That's really funny. So you're involved in the Dixie Deer Classic, and this is the part of the story that blew my mind when you told me, because you're kind of just being reserved and not really expressing your side of life at the table. But then you opened up on this Dixie Deer Classic. How are you involved with that?
So the Wake County Wildlife Club, and I'll start kind of from the bottom briefly, but the Wake County Wildlife Club is a nonprofit organization. It was established in the 60s, 1966 to be exact. And it's a 100-member nonprofit organization affiliated with the National Rifle Association.
Okay.
That is a club that pretty much puts on the Dixie Deer Classic. I'm the treasurer for the Wake County Wildlife Club.
Yep.
I'm actually the only woman member, and I'll be the first. I'm in line right now. I've done my 2 years, and I've got 3 more years in the board process to be the first woman president. So actually looking forward to that. But
wow.
That is the baseline and the quote-unquote foundation for the Dixie Deer Classic. So I got into the club about 6 years ago as a member. I've been to the Wake County Wildlife Club growing up since I could remember. I mean, there's pictures of me as a baby there. But getting into that and finally becoming a member on my own and wanting to go there on my own and understanding, what they do as a club in the forefront, of the hunter education, the wildlife arts, the natural resources, and the opportunities that they provide for people was very appealing to me. Outside of that, day to day, let's just get in the woods and harvest an animal. There's a lot more that goes into it that people don't see. And so that was something I really wanted to be involved in. And the more and more I got involved in it, obviously the DDC kind of became a part of that. We operate separately. So we've got, obviously a committee and a board and all that stuff for the Dixie Deer Classic. But I decided to step into that strongly a couple years ago.
Okay. How come?
And I've grew up at the DDC. Again, I've been there since I was a kid. So I remember running around and meeting all the people and seeing everybody and how much fun it was. And it's a fun show. It's a fun weekend. I wanted to be on the other end. I wanted to know the people. I wanted to talk to the people and be the one that brought them there. So that's kind of how I started into it. The DDC has been around for 38 years. It started in 1981. And we were pretty much the reason it started was just to be a place to provide, hunters, an event to provide to hunters to meet, see the variety of hunting equipment, products, services, all that stuff. It was actually, as quote unquote, Dick Idle said, the first event of its kind in history. Okay. And as the years went on, we were recognized as premier trophy whitetail shows, Southeast largest hunting show. And you started to see the trend of all the other shows starting to pop up. And so that was a value to me that I saw in myself that this is North Carolina. You need to be a part of this. And so I did. And now I'm the show office manager for the Classic. This is something that even though the door is shut, we still do it every year. I mean, all year long, excuse me. Mm-hmm. We've got meetings upon meetings on how to make it better, what we can do. A lot of it is very old school. In the fact compared to other shows like the ATA or the SHOT Show. And there's a reason for that. We kind of want to keep it that way. We want to keep it that home feel.
When you say that, what do you mean? What do you mean old school?
So it's very, most people know us as the deer show. And the reason for that is any deer you want to bring that's mounted, we'll score it. Horns, we'll score it. We put it in Boone and Crockett. We've got official scorers there. That's how people recognize us. Every ticket that you purchase gets you one free deer head scored. Okay. And so that was the reason for our show to get started. Well, then we started adding the vendors into it. And it's kind of I wouldn't say flea market style, but that's the setup of it. Okay. We're not trying to be a huge, outside of events, like having all these names, coming to and concerts and stuff like that. That's kind of extravagant. We want it to be an area where it's family oriented, come hang out, more so a get together, a carnival, but at the same time, with respect, people call us the money show. And we stay true to our vendors that have been with us for 30 plus years, and we're always going to do that. So there's not so much you can change to keep that signature, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. So it's still a public show. It's not a private show.
It is. It's very much a public show. We bring about 25 to 30,000 throughout the weekend.
Gotcha. What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now with this and trying to grow it, keep it alive?
Well, obviously, you're in the 20th century, so technology always changes. You got to keep up with that. 2 years ago, we got the app in on the phones. That was the biggest part is getting that app and publicizing that, and people have it visually in front of them. Growing social media. Social media is, as we know, the biggest part of our industry right now, whether you like it or not. So you've got to be on there. You've got to grow that. You've got to be able to respond to people. I get questions daily on just random topics. Who's going to be there this year in 2018? Who's going to control the archery shoot? We do a lot of events for kids during it. So you're trying to keep up with the industry. All these shows that are starting to pop up with different people, the hunting quote unquote celebrities are getting more pricier and pricier, and just trying to keep up with everybody and the way things evolve, and the idea behind hunting to some people is changing, and it's not necessarily something that they grew up doing. It's a fad they're trying to get into. So in a way, you've got to target them too, despite your opinions or what you feel. It's a different market.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seems like it's hard to dive in today's technology world when you're trying to keep it old school. You know what I mean?
Extremely. If you could only know.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it, right? That's the challenge.
100%. 100%.
Right. Wow. Well, we haven't been there yet, but I'm hoping to get down there for the 2018 show.
It's an awesome event. It's a lot of work for us. And again, too, to throw something out there, everybody that puts this show on together, it's obviously not just me. There's a lot of us, and we have hundreds of volunteers that we get every year, thankfully. But everything that we do is all volunteer work. Everything I do throughout the year is, non-paid volunteer work.
Okay. All right. That's crazy that you put in that much time and effort into something that's basically volunteer. But
it is a lot. Yes.
But you must love it in some level, right?
I do. I put way too much on my plate. I obviously bite off a lot more than I can chew a lot of times, but I love it. I wouldn't keep doing it, and all the extra stuff I do outside of the Dixie Deer Classic, I continue to put on just because there's nothing more satisfying than to see people smiling or to be able to share people's first hunting stories and the kids, and it's just awesome.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. Can we talk about your buddy Josh Carney for a little bit?
We can, yeah. Good old Josh.
How'd you meet Josh?
So I actually had Josh come out a couple years back to the Dixie Deer Classic. We do some educational stuff throughout the weekend. We've got a lot of kids events. We do scavenger hunts. We do speaking events on different things, how to get into the outdoors, personal stories, all those seminars throughout the week. And I was going through media and I was looking for somebody new, some different stuff, not a real huge, big name. And at the time, there was a lot of talk about the natural animal voice caller. And I said, let me check him out. Watched his videos, followed him for a little bit, just to kind of see the activity that he got. And one day I just randomly reached out to him and said, hey, this is Heather Shepard with the Dixie Deer Classic. Would love to chat with you if you had some time. And he answered right then. So I was like, okay, well, awesome. We connected. He came down, blew the crowd away. I mean, people were following him. It was awesome. And at the time, that's the only thing people really knew him about.
Right.
Or knew of him. And so we chatted, and after he left, I had him a schedule. So I was he would fly in. I said, this is going to pick you up. You're going to do this and this and this. And I had a schedule laid out all weekend. And when he left, he was like, I really need somebody behind me as organized as you are and involved as you are. And I said, okay, we can. I didn't really think anything of it. And at the time I was like, we'll chat about it and we'll talk about it. Well, he kept on me. And so, one thing led to another, and I started setting him up with some events and banquets and stuff. And we go to the ATA show, the SHOT Show, and help him. And I mean, it's been a great partnership. Josh is a great guy. He just needed to get his story out there, and for people, not to know him just as the natural caller, but to understand who he was and, his story behind him and where he wanted to go.
Right. Yeah, we became friends with Josh as well, and Josh introduced us to you, and we're very grateful that he did so. He's just a great guy, and
He is a great guy.
quality human being, and he likes
Good heart.
Yes, great heart, loves to have fun, and loves to play hard too. So that's what we enjoy about Josh.
He does, yes.
Yep. He's a good
There's
guy.
no doubt.
Yep. About James Blankenbeckler, you introduced him to us as well.
Yes.
As we were standing there talking to Josh, and we had James on last week, of course, and boy, God blew my mind about how intelligent he is when it comes to deer hunting.
Unbelievable. I mean, you can sit and talk to James for hours just to pick his brain on how to hang a deer camera. And you ask the question, he's going to give you all scenarios of why, how, when, and what to do after you do it. I mean, the amount of knowledge that James has literally will take your breath away. And a lot of people, me and James are kind of alike in a way. Obviously, we're good friends. We've hunted together. We've got some great trips behind us. But we're both set back in that we don't want to be completely in front of everybody.
Right.
We're not going to sit there and tell you all about it unless you ask. And I think that's where we kind of get along, so to speak, in terms of the outlook on things. He went turkey hunting with me, and when we left the turkey hunt, he was like, "Oh my God, your passion comes right out without you even speaking a word. I mean, you can hold the gun on the turkey and I can just see it come alive. You're a different person."
Right.
And I said, it's kind of like you and hunting horns. I mean, you're a completely different person. His mindset goes military style. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is.
I'm hoping to hunt with James someday on a deer hunt because I want to see him in action.
I mean, it's from the point of, he is. I mean, he's got it down pat. I don't know if he told you, I listened to part of the podcast, but I don't know if he told you about his bow style. He didn't pick up a gun until a few years ago. I mean, he's bow hunted ever since God knows when, and the size of horns that he's killed, and it's just unbelievable. Yeah. He knows what he's doing. I mean, it's proven.
Yeah. Yeah. And
definitely a great guy.
The fact he's so modest about it, that
extremely modest.
Yeah. He doesn't, I mean, he has a great following on Facebook. He has, he's good at what he does with the camera. But it doesn't. It's not his driving force. His driving force is the hunt. You can tell, like the movie stuff or the TV stuff is just kind of secondary. He's like, I'll do it because I can, and I think I should. But the hunt is where it's at.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, but he's a quality individual as well.
He is very much.
You hang out with some good friends, some quality friends.
I do. I've got some good people in my corner. I can't lie.
And as I told James, I said one of my barometers about the person that we might be meeting is that if Josh says it's okay and Heather says they're okay, then they're okay. That's how I now judge people as I'm introduced into the hunting industry.
There you go.
Right.
I did learn something new about James, though, from you, Jay.
Really? What'd you find out?
I did not know he could shoot his bow left and right.
Left and right, right?
He kept that from me, and I called him on it. I was like, "You keeping secrets from me?" And he was like, "I thought I told you." I was like, "No, because I would have pinged off and said I can shoot left and right too."
Oh, okay. All right. So we have a little friendly rivalry going on here.
I know. Not with a bow, though.
Not with a bow.
He's deadly with a bow.
All right, Heather, let's talk about your alligator hunt.
So I was in Florida, Arcadia, Florida, with Wayne of Red Eye Safaris, and we were actually turkey hunting. Yep. And after the turkey hunt, we decided that we were going to go out and play with some gators.
Okay.
We were in one of his canals, kind of going back and forth and searching and seeing what we could see and where we could see. We got up on one canal, and there was quite a bit of activity there. So what we did is we actually laid down. I had a rifle out, and I was kind of perched up waiting for the gators to start moving. Mm-hmm. Just like any other animal, actually, when you walk aside, canals and stuff, gators can see you and understand what's going on. But we had one gator at the very end of the canal, and I would say he was probably, 400, 500 yards away. And he just wasn't cooperating, wasn't coming to us. So Tommy, one of the other guys with us, decided to go over there and see if he could actually hook him. It all happened so quick. And he had actually asked me, he said, if we got up close and personal with the gator, how do you want to take the gator? And I said, how close can I get to him? He's like, as close as you want to get to him. And I said, well, heck, can I kill him with a knife? And he said, absolutely. He looked at me kind of funny and said, are you sure? And I said, I'm sure. I had a knife on my side. James actually had just given me a brand new knife open season.
Yep.
And so I had that knife and I was like, why not? I mean, it's the perfect time. And so we went over there and he hooked them, ran over there, dropped the rifle, got over there. And, you know, obviously gator hunting's not exactly how everybody seems it to be, but it's kind of a team effort. They started bringing them in, and obviously the gator sits there and fights with you, and you got to kind of get up close, and you've got a shark rod. Okay. So the weight of the line is pretty good. One person's holding the line, one person's in the water, one person's pretty much standing outside of it, kind of helping. So it's, like I said, it's a team effort. You know, after some time of playing with the gator and letting him roll and do his thing, he got up on, and as soon as we got him onto the surface, or the bank, I would say, of the canal, I was right there, you know, feet in the water, ready to go. And what happens is you pretty much get him to a position where, quote unquote, you can control his mouth. Obviously, gators can swing their tails and snap at you and turn.
Right.
So you got to be conscious of what's going on. And it all happens, obviously, so quick in that moment. But if you kind of slow it down, you know, you control their mouth. So you've got their mouth controlled by your knee. And then at the same time, you're kind of sitting and straddling on top of them, so to speak. And I had to learn really quick, if I decided to knife a gator, you know, obviously where the kill points were and what would be the fastest way. So in my mind, I'm concentrating, you know, on a lot of factors right now. Obviously, this gator can turn on me. You know, a lot of bad things can happen, but my adrenaline was pumping so much, and I was in such a mindset that I was actually about to take this animal, this freaking huge creature that could take me alive, with a knife. So
Right.
We're sitting there and everybody's yelling and the commotion's going, the adrenaline's rushing, you know, everybody's just pumped up. And it was just a matter of time. And it was like I was taking a knife. I don't know how much force I had, but it felt like I had the strongman force of a 500-pound man just hitting him in the back of the head where I was supposed to hit that point at. And it was like it just dudded. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not doing this right. I'm freaking out. And he's like, no, you're doing a great job. You know, keep going, just have control of yourself, have control of the situation. And so we just kept going. And then next thing you know, I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. And so it was just, I mean, the situation was epic. I mean, you're in the water, you're in the moment, you know, you're on top of an alligator. And the reality of it was, it took me, I would say, probably, I don't know, maybe a minute, 2 minutes to get him. And I finally did. And I stood up and he was like, dude, you're pretty badass. You killed that gator with a knife. And it was just so surreal. And, you know, the moment happens all at once, but it was pretty epic. There's no doubt about that.
So you killed an alligator with a knife.
With a knife.
Wow. How many people can say that? Is this like a common thing?
It is not a common thing. And I actually was sitting there talking to Wayne about it after the fact. And he said, you know, and all the gators that he's taken, and he has a gator farm and grows gators and stuff. He said, I can't really think of that many people that I know, period, that have taken them with a knife, you know, maybe 100 or so. And to narrow it down, the women wise, he said, I don't know, but a couple of women that have ever gotten that close to a gator with a knife. Right. Period.
Right.
He said, the average person obviously is not that comfortable in that situation. He said, so you should feel pretty, because I was just acting like it was nothing, and that my nerves kind of got me through it. But, you know, in the back of your head, you're always thinking, how often does this happen? And so I had to ask him, and apparently it's not as often as I thought it would be.
Right. I would think it's a pretty rare occurrence. Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense. Unbelievable.
It was intense.
Wow.
It was pretty awesome.
All right, that's a story I've been meaning to ask you for quite a while now. All right, so now you've also got a record bear kill, right, in North Carolina?
I do, yes, in 2011.
All right, can you share that story with us as well?
I will. That is actually by far one of my most favorite hunting memories, period. We were in Hyde County here in North Carolina, which is known for the largest bear across the states. And we actually still hunted that morning on a piece of property where there was a lot of bear activity, and we didn't really see much. The conditions weren't that great. And so after a while, we decided that we were going to call the dogs in. Here in North Carolina, we use dogs a lot for black bear, very common. So we started the process, got the dogs out, went to a property, and I would say it took about 2 to 3 hours back and forth, chasing some different bears. Obviously, when you're hunting with dogs, you really don't know the size of your bear until you get up on it. And we were on a couple different ones. Well, we got to one, and he kept going through a bunch of thicket. And I was with a friend of mine at the time, and he was in front of me kind of controlling the dogs, and he said, "Are you ready to go in?" And I said, "Well, absolutely. You don't have to ask me. Let's go." And he said, "Stay on top of me because I'm going to be pushing these dogs all the way through." And I said, "All right." So we're getting in the thicket, and I mean, obviously, you're kind of worn out from running back and forth throughout the property with the dogs, chasing them. Mm-hmm. And so we get into the thicket, and I can see the bear cross, like full movement. And I was like, holy, this is a huge animal. So, of course, adrenaline picks back up, and you're just in that mode. And I was army crawling through thicket. I mean, briars on my face, bleeding, and it was like nothing was stopping me. When we get up to the bear, the dogs kind of had the bear bayed, and I was probably about maybe 20 yards from the bear. And from the moment of me being able to stand up and kind of position and control myself, I was shooting a 45-70 lever action. So for me to kind of stand up and get the gun ready, because it's a pretty heavy gun, in that situation, he saw me. So he started moving. And as he started moving, in my head, I was just thinking, all this work and what we've done, you are not getting away. So I pulled up, and in the midst of his running, I dropped him.
Wow.
Well, obviously I knew he was kind of big. I didn't know how big, and I didn't really know what I had done in the moment. And we get up to him, and we start cutting the thicket away so we can get around him and see kind of what we've got. And everybody, I mean, you can start hearing people come in through the woods, and they were just screaming, "Oh my God," and I'm sitting here thinking, what is going on? And they're like, "You do not realize what you have just taken." And I'm like, obviously I don't. I understand we're all dirty, and, that was good, and the journey was fine, but what do you got? Talk to me. So we finally get to a point where we've got kind of a cut through, or a clear to start moving this bear. So we get a whole bunch of strong arms in. We're trying to figure out how we're going to move it. They get pretty much like a duck boat to put them in and start sliding them, across the thickets. Well, we get to a canal. How are we going to cross the canal? Well, they put the duck boat in the canal, and it snaps it, breaks it in half. So it was a journey trying to get that thing out. Lo and behold, we had to get a ranger to come in there, strap it, and kind of pull it out. And by the time we pull it out, we put it on a scale, and it weighed 678 pounds, and my jaw just dropped. I was like, oh my gosh. Wow. And then from there, it was just like reporters starting coming in, and people flying in, and I've got, blood on my face, didn't even know it. Just the adrenaline and the amount of intensity throughout that entire hunt, with people screaming at you, dogs barking. I mean, unbelievable. I remember it like the back of my hand. And it was funny because this is kind of a need to know thing, but in the midst of all that happening, we go to dinner, and I knew I didn't feel that great. And it was to top it off on knowing kind of where I'd hit myself in terms of that record of it's a record for women. So obviously it was one of the largest bear killed that season, but it was a record kill for North Carolina resident women in terms of taking bear. I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. So it just topped it off, and it was just one of those days that was like, it can't get any better.
Right. Wow. That's an intense day right there.
It was huge. Yeah.
Wow. So I've hunted in North Carolina, not too far from Raleigh. I've hunted in Sims, North Carolina, with my friend Bob, who was a guest on this show. And I remember going down there and hunting on some property. We're overlooking soybean fields, and coming from New Hampshire, where we're 85% timber, most of our shots are 100 yards or less, right? So I'm down in the stand, and I see a doe to my left at about 100 yards cruising, and I see 3 deer out at about 600. And it dawns on me that I've never shot 600 yards. I don't even know what a 600-yard shot feels like. So I shot the doe at 100 for some meat. Now, you take these long-range shots somewhat routinely. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I do. A friend of the family's, Dan Glover, is a gunsmith, and he actually got me into long-range hunting. I started practicing and using his custom 308, and it's a whole nother level. I mean, you don't even understand what goes into it when you factor the wind and kind of where you're positioned, where your target's positioned. And it's almost kind of like it's a 2-man team sometimes to figure out how far you can shoot. If you're shooting over 1,000 yards, there's a lot that goes into it. So it's just like, it's interesting. It's intriguing to know that you can hit a point that far away. we were talking about my most memorable hunt earlier, and it actually dawned on me that honestly, I would rewind and say one of my most memorable times now is the time that my daughter last year got to see her first animal being taken. We were in the stand together, and she was just enjoying the moment. Long range hunting, you're a little bit further away, so she didn't have to be that quiet. And a deer came up, and she sat there and said, "Mommy, that's too far." And I was like, "No, just watch and learn. You'll be good." And she sat there and watched me the whole time. And the deer was, she was right at 520 yards, I believe that one was. And I mean, you get on it, you make sure everything's good. You check your sights, and you sit there and play with it until you can get it right. And breathing is a huge part in long range hunting. So you kind of got to control yourself and control the moment when you squeeze that trigger. Because it's all, and a lot of times too, the triggers are finicky, and it's literally like a pound pull, not even a pound. 520, it dropped. She smiled from ear to ear. We got out of the stand. She ran the whole entire way right up there, touched it. And I was like, "You are my girl, not afraid, love it." I mean, so it's one of those things where it was a memorable hunt for me because obviously she was with me. It was the first time she had ever seen me truly hunting and taking an animal at the same time. But long range, I mean, kind of going back to your question, I know I got off on a tangent, Jay, but it's awesome. So I actually killed a black bear at 518 yards. It was a couple years ago, I believe. And it's just, I mean, to me, there's a lot of people out there that might tell you it's unethical. I don't really believe that. I think that you're all in the situation, and they can still kind of hear to an extent at that moment, but I'm not going to take a shot unless I know the shot's a good shot. It's just like shooting a deer at over 1,000 yards. If you feel truly and honestly that you can't drop that animal, then don't pull the trigger.
Right.
So to me, it's just another level of intensity that you can add to your pocket and to the value of being outdoors. And it's just learning and understanding, kind of how it happens and how it takes place is just awesome, especially once you complete it and know that you can, take an animal that far.
Right. It's pretty cool. I don't think I can even see 500 yards where I live. Like, there's just no place to look that far unless I drive to the top of a mountain and look in that sense.
Oh, yeah. Us flatlanders have good views.
Yeah. Dusty, you understand, but you've been to New Hampshire. You know I don't have much of a visual, but where Dusty lives, you can see forever too. It's crazy. Like I'm still blown away. Like when I went to North Carolina, when I went to Ohio, I'm like, you guys can see as far as the biggest lakes in New Hampshire. How do you do this? I mean, I'd have to learn how to shoot long range because I just don't get those opportunities where I live.
It literally makes you sick to ride in the woods in New Hampshire because that's all you can see is like 40 yards in, and you're like, yep, it's all woods.
Aggravating in a way sometimes.
I can see trees.
I see trees. I see more trees. I see, there's another tree.
Yeah, there's trees there.
Yeah, there's some more over there. And there's some way down there.
Look a 2-acre field.
It's a challenge too. I mean, it's it's a personal challenge for yourself when you can know that you can shoot that far.
You start shooting anything over 500, you're doing something. That's impressive, Heather. Really, I mean, it really is. I've shot some long distance shots, and there's a whole lot more that goes into it than people realize.
A whole lot more. I appreciate that.
Let's talk about some deer hunting strategies. You've been around it your whole life, so let's go deep like we did with James and find out what you know and see if we can drag Mr. Phillips back into the conversation here.
Absolutely.
All right, Dusty, I'm going to turn the mic over to you. You see what you can find out about Heather.
I'm going to do that, and let's start out just kind of a gear rundown, Heather, as far as let's start with your camouflage. What kind of camouflage you wearing when you're deer hunting?
And I'm going to be as blunt as I can with both of y'all. In the beginning, when I started, I could wear plaid for all I cared. Camo growing up to me, and that was one thing that's funny about nowadays, is that it was so nonchalant back then to what it is now. And I didn't really choose a camo up until, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, to be honest with you, just because I wasn't that involved on that side of it. Now, obviously, I have a lot of realtree in terms of if I had to pick a specific camo, but and it still blows people's mind that I don't have a specific camouflage that I wear. But again, if I had to narrow it down, I would say realtree.
Gotcha. And how's realtree been as far as women's apparel? Has it been where you can find stuff that fits you?
Yes. It has, I would say, probably about 3 years ago, the women's apparel across the board has changed drastically to where the height, the width, all of it fits good to us. Before, you had to find pretty much a guy's outfit and pick one that you enjoyed that fit you the best and hope for the best. Now, a lot of opportunities have opened up for women, a lot, and it's pretty awesome to see.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. What kind of boots you wear when you're hunting deer?
Depends on what territory I'm hunting. Here in North Carolina, it's very swampy. The fields get flooded a lot, so a lot of times I'll just wear, your basic muck boots. And then if I'm out South Carolina, a little bit further out where it's not quite as swampy, usually I'm wearing Irish setters, snake boots.
Very good. Let's talk a little bit about your bow. What kind of bow are you shooting?
I shoot a PSE driven.
Any particular arrows?
No, and James is kind of going back and forth with me on that, on who I need to shoot and what I need to shoot. And, for me, it's you pull back, and if you can do it, you can do it. I'm not a big, I'm in it for the actual experience.
Any particular broadhead?
Nope. I use Napas. If you open up my case and you the most common is going to be a Nap, I would say. Gotcha. Kill zones.
Let's get in a little bit about your tree stand. Being a female hunter, what's your favorite kind of tree stand? Hang on, ladder, climber? Tell us what you use.
My favorite tree stand, I would say probably just a basic ladder. I mean, it's what I'm most comfortable with. Obviously, you put me in a climber or a lean-to or a box stand, I'm going to be fine with it. I would say most comfortable in my terrain would be a ladder.
Very good. Any particular brand?
No particular brand. I'm very easy to please when it comes to brands.
It sounds like it, man.
I am.
So obviously we've covered your gear and kind of your setup. Tell us about the terrain that you're most familiar hunting.
I'm a flatlander, so obviously what I'm most comfortable with is flatlands. We've got pines all over us. Anywhere you go, you're going to be hunting pines. Obviously, when I travel out of state, you've got mountains and hollers and stuff you got to get used to. But for the most part, I'm a flatlander. You've got your farms, your open fields, pine trees. You've got oaks every once in a while, but most of the time you're in a swamp hunting in pines, or you're on the side of a field hunting in pines.
Gotcha. So when you're hunting in pines, I'm assuming that these are big, mature pine trees.
They are, yes. I mean, obviously, if you're, every once in a while you'll get a big oak or a hardwood that you can use, and that's kind of like a saving grace for you. But
when you go into hunt the pines, how do you pick a location that suits the best setup for deer hunting in the pines?
A lot of times it depends on what I guess you would say technically. If I'm walking into a farm that I know nothing about, take it from that, because most of what I hunt now, I grew up hunting, so I know it like the back of my hand. But if I'm walking into a property and somebody gives me a property that I don't know, obviously you're going to walk around and kind of scout and see what you're working with, how deep your woods are. If you've got depth to them, ideally you want to put it in the trees, and then you also want to put it on the outside. That way you've got two options. For the most part, I'm not a huge field hunter. I don't like hunting fields. It's not fun to me. It's something where you can just sit up and hope for the best, but you need to obviously look for scrapings, look for where, you can look for tracks. Obviously you're not, unless it's close to season, you're not going to see it. Nowadays we have cameras. You can throw some cameras up and kind of test and feel the waters for what you're working with, and play around with them, put some feed out, see what you've got, if you're getting any nibbles and not, move areas and kind of just, it's, again, that's where you grasp kind of growing up and just knowing. It's one of those things where you just look and if it's an area or a good area. I had a girl reach out to me the other day and was asking from A to Z, how does she do it? And it was so hard for me to explain, almost like you're giving somebody directions and you don't know the street names, but I can give you the landmarks. I can tell you, 2 paved roads, take a left, or at the big red barn, take a right. So for me, it's more so just kind of looking around and seeing what you're working with. Nowadays, you've got so much technology and stuff you can post up to help you and get an answer quickly within a week of where you need to set your stands. And, obviously from there, then you have to worry about getting in and actually hunting. Is the wind right? Is the temperature right? Is the moon full the night before? So, to me, there's a lot that goes into it. But at the same time, I'm definitely not a James when it comes down to all the aspects of the big bucks and how to follow them. I mean, he can minear call a deer with his finger.
Right, but there's got to be. I'm going to dig a little deeper into this and get you out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Oh Lord.
There's got to be, and it sparks my curiosity. I know it will. Our our listeners and people that participate in the show. From a female's perspective, and I'm not separating you from a male hunter, but I'm curious on how that you go in and you lay out a place that you want to set up a tree stand. What's your vision when you say you can go by landmarks? Well, what kind of landmarks? You might not be able to tell us the street name, but you said you can tell us landmarks. What draws you to set up a tree stand in a particular area? Let's say we're going into a pine woods, and there's a couple fields that obviously is a food source. The deer are interacting in the fields, they're grazing, feeding, and they're moving in and out of there. But what makes you recognize a good stand placement location? How do you go about that?
Obviously me. So going back to what I was saying about pines, you've got pine thicket. There's an old saying that pine thickets are pretty much fantastic places to kill a deer. And it's true. Growing up, you've got briar thickets, you've got pine thickets that's like our focus for, and I'm going to kind of circle back here. It goes back to like rabbit hunting. You need a beagle to rabbit hunt, in my opinion. And to do so with rabbits, you're going to find the most closed area with thickets that you can push them in and watch it just have a heyday. So the same with me, and I kind of look at the same concept with pines. When I look at pines, I know deer are going to be held in there. And you kind of unravel your steps outside thinking, okay, well, where would I be? What would I do? Put yourself in the animal's position. Very few people hunt thick pines that I talk to associated with like James or somebody else like that. But deer are just like us. So at night, they're going to get up to use the bathroom. They're going to drink water. They're going to have snacks. And during the day, what are those big bucks going to be doing? So all that runs through my head. Where are they bedding down? Where are they going to get their water source from? Where am I going to see them in between those trails of going to bed and getting water? So you kind of just walk through to figure out your deer trails, your hallways. And obviously, you're going to need shears. You're going to need, a knife or some kind of cutters to walk through and figure out, okay, well, from here to here, I see movement. I see tracks of movement. Can I make it easier for them? And it's almost like if you create an option for me to walk from one end of the pond to the other, but yet you put a bridge over that pond, I'm going to take that bridge for a shorter route. So in my mind, I'm kind of setting up a scenario for how the deer would move. Hopefully that's going to be the way it is. You kind of create that feeling for them, that comfort for them. And I think that in my mind, I feel like if I create that scenario for them, once I figure out where they bed to where they're going to feed to where they're going to kind of move around, in my mind, I feel like I'm creating that sanctuary for them. It's going to be that comfort for them, And from there, that's where usually I set up. And it's just more so like a chore of scouting that you kind of realize. I don't know if that answered any of your questions, Dusty, but it's kind of one of those things where I literally just put myself in the scenario and think about, if I'm getting out of my truck to walk here, what route am I going to take? How am I going to get there? Obviously you've got to look for your scat and your signs. And, if it gets to a certain point of the season, there might be rubs on the trees, but it's more so understanding a deer, understanding when they grow up, do they stay with their mom? Do they not stay with their mom? You got to kind of understand the lifestyle of a deer and how they move and which direction they're going to go.
I tell you what, I'd take some directions from you any day, really.
I know that was like, I felt like I was going in circles for a little bit, but in reality, if you step back and just look at it as a whole, it just makes sense. Absolutely.
And I'm glad that you dug a little deeper into that whole process and not just take the short route out to answer my question. And I think that you answered it very thoroughly, and thank you for that. But so once you lay out how the deer are moving, what's going on in the woods, and then you go into stand placement. And is it different for a female as far as height, or are you okay with any particular height? Say somebody's hanging a hang-on stand for you and you're traveling to another farm. Are you okay going with the real high tree stand placement, or you feel comfortable at a lower height?
Heights do not bother me at all. I would say our average... obviously, if you're going to the store and picking up a stand, you're going to get in between most of the time a 12 to 15 foot stand just from a basic store. But if I'm putting, sticks in the tree, height to me doesn't really bother me. I'd actually rather be a little bit higher up just because I feel it's better for the hunt itself. But I've hunted on the ground. So from the ground up, obviously, you're going to have different capabilities in terms of your movement or, when you're going to draw your bow back to when you're going to put your gun up on your shoulder or wherever. And to me, I feel obviously higher, you've got more an advantage. Can I put them up by myself, absolutely. My comfort zone, I would say, for the most part, would be in between the 15 and 20. I hunt box stands a lot, so box stands is a whole different game. Obviously, if you can set that up way before season starts, as season ends, season starts. So, as soon as you can if you want a box stand or a condo or some style that way, go ahead and put it up as soon as you can so that they get used to it. It's not new to them. Obviously, that's the most comfortable and easiest for anybody, woman or man. For me, I like to put those up because I do have a 4-year-old that I want to take with me. It's easier to hide her, play with her, keep her a little bit quieter if it's, larger and bigger and higher up. But in reality, I would say height to me is not a bother. To a lot of ladies, it can be, though.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, and great tip if you didn't pick up on that, to get your box blinds out early and let the deer herd and the other critters get adjusted to that being there. And so now that you got your setup and we kind of run through how you pick your location, what's the determining factors on what you would say as prime hunting days throughout the season? Is there anything that you monitor, that moon phase or the conditions that encourage you to go hunting more or less? Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
I would say, as I'm growing older and learning from more people, James being one, I never was a huge scent person. And so I'm learning different factors. I know scent obviously has nothing to do with the Mother Nature portion of it, but getting into like the wind aspects of it. And, obviously your crosswinds is a north wind, but, you need to pay attention to that. You need to have some sort of way that you're able to read the weather, the night before, understand, is it going to be a full moon? Is it not going to be a full moon? Obviously a lot of people, I would say hopefully 80% of educated people would understand what a moon does to hunting, the light at night. What is it going to do to your movement where you think they were last night? Are they going to be in the same place in the morning? So I do pay attention to that. I pay attention to the wind, especially if you're, bow hunting or out in the open. You don't want the wind going in your favor towards you. But I know this is going to sound crazy, and a lot of people are against it. They'll wake up in the morning and it's pouring down rain, and I'm not dealing with that. I'm not getting out wet. I'm not getting in the rain and sitting there. To me, that's like an additional step in hunting. For some reason, I don't know why, but I love it. That's like my prime time, because I feel most people think retro that they're not going to get anything. They're not going to see anything. It's a waste of time. It's just like duck season. It couldn't get any duckier. To me, hunting in the rain is like a true full-on commitment. Animals are going to move. I mean, they've got to eat. They've got to drink. They're going to move, and it's just a matter of time. I feel like I'm taking an extra step to do that. I know that sounds weird, but other than that, I mean, it's just paying attention, obviously, to your surroundings. If it's rained the day before, are you hunting near water? Are you hunting on a swamp? Is the water going to be raised? Do you need to readjust where you're going to sit? And then, you have your early season and your late season with the ruts, and understanding the pattern of deer. Is it during rut season? Are they going to be moving wide open, chasing does? Are they in velvet? Are they pretty secure and stationed where they're at right now? So you just got to kind of understand. It's like you're doing your homework for anything else. You can't take a test without preparing for it.
Gotcha. Do you run trail cameras?
I don't run too many trail cameras, to be honest with you, Dusty. I do. We've got a property right now that's about 800 acres, and I personally have 2 trail cameras on it. That's it.
Wow, that's not very many for 800.
It is not, no. And we've got other properties, obviously, where we've got tons of them. And there's some aspects to me that enjoy it because you can track, you can see the movement and cycle of the animal. But then there's a part of me sometimes that just wants to go out and sit. And it's like obviously you know your placement and you know what's around and you know the activity because you've set your stands up and you've put feet out. But at the same time, it's almost like it's a reward when it does come and you not knowing what's been there, what hasn't been there. Yeah, and it brings me back to the old style. I mean, I'm very old fashioned too in a lot of things. And that one, it took me a while to get those other cameras, to be honest with you.
I mean, it makes sense in a way, but in a way, there's a lot of acres there and there's no physical way that you're able to.
There is. Yes, I agree. Now, I do share that. It's not solely mine. I do share it. And there are other cameras around, but me personally looking. And obviously, if I really want to know, I can say, hey, what'd you see? And we kind of all plan that out. But to me, there's a portion of it and some of the stands that I place and I hunt, I don't want to know. So I should take that a step back, I guess, sharing it with others. There's cameras all around. Personally, for me and seeing and viewing the pictures on the camera, I only use 2. And I would say there's, I don't know, probably 10 to 12 stands off the top of my head that we've put out.
Gotcha. Well, it sounds like they got it covered pretty good now. My whole thing is that I got to know. Like if I'm gonna shoot, I want to know that I'm taking, not that I'm a trophy hunter, but I'd like to take one of the top 3 mature animals on the piece of property that I'm hunting. So that always sticks in my mind. Does that stick in your mind, or are you just you more or less?
It's in my mind. It definitely is in my mind. Again, I'm not a huge trophy hunter, but I'm not it's brown, it's down either. So if I have a certain size buck come in front of me, and I feel that they're only 100 to 115 maybe score, I'm going to let it walk. It's not like if it comes in front of me, it's going to be an automatic. Obviously, where I hunt in North Carolina, the average, I would say, a decent deer is a 120 to a 135 on a common day. You got people that view certain ways, and I'm a part of hunting leases too, where you've got a certain size. If you shoot below that size, you're paying a certain amount of money because you weren't supposed to pull the trigger. So again, it gives me that feel that it's just a different level. I don't know. It brings me back to the old days. It reminds me of, just getting in the stand and kind of letting it go and seeing what works or what happens. Obviously, I enjoy knowing what's out there. And I enjoy seeing the pictures and knowing that I've got a mature buck on film. But at the same time, it's just, and I know you understand, it's just a different feeling, but I'm not going to pull the trigger, on a stand that I have without a camera if it's not a decent size.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. You talked about being in a hunting lease with penalties about shooting a smaller caliber buck. Can you talk about that a little bit? How does that system all work?
So there's it might be more prevalent here in North Carolina, but if you get into like a hunting club and you have, I don't know, say 20 members in the club,
yep, and
you've got 3,500 acres that you're hunting, obviously you're buying into the club so that everybody can kind of hunt together. It's kind of like a little community or a little family. Everybody puts their work into it. You have your work days where you got to mow lanes or do what needs to be around the properties. But to manage and maintain the buck population and the deer population, period, you have to put restrictions on it. So, when you pay in, obviously you have to put a level of, or a limit, I should say, on how many animals you can take down. So you get a 2 buck limit for the most part. Then you put in a size requirement. Anything that you shoot below a 120 buck, you're going to pay $500. You get your shirt tail pulled and you pay your money. That kind of gives you the incentive not to pay attention. Hey, pay attention to your size. Understand what a mature buck is. Don't sit there and shoot, a 1-2-year-old buck that could live next year and be a beauty. So it's a good way to manage deer, especially when you have more than 5 people that you're, hunting with on a piece of property. Right,
for sure. So how often is a deer misjudged and the penalty gets thrown out?
That's a good question. It doesn't happen quite as often now. I would say you might have 1 a year at the most now, and take into effect too that we'll put coal bucks up. So if we see, a coal buck that might be obviously below 120 and it's on the board, if you see it, take it. Obviously we don't want to keep that within the deer population, but I would say it might happen once a year. Now, back then it was a little obviously more. When you get kids into the situation, you have to be careful with that too, just because, it might be that, Bob decides to bring his 15-year-old and put him on a stand. Well, he's not going to be able to know or judge quite as good as somebody who's been doing it for a long time. So it could happen there. Obviously, if it does happen, you have to pay. Rules are rules. So it's kind of hand in hand. It could be 1 or 2, maybe a season.
Gotcha.
Ideally, we'd like it to be 0. But
is there somebody that's like the commander of the land that issues the penalty, or how's that all work?
No, it's just the club. So it would be just like, me, you, and Jay, and Josh and James getting, hey, we're going to buy this piece of property in Missouri. Well, we need to regulate. We think different about deer. In order to put, a good management process in to keep good-sized deer around, we need to put some regulations on what we can shoot and what we can't shoot. So if you're bringing friends and I'm bringing friends, they need to understand they can't just pull the trigger on a 4-point buck, or they can't pull a trigger on an 8-point, 118. Obviously if you didn't regulate that for people who didn't quite understand, then you wouldn't have deer to continue year to year. So everybody gets together and kind of, I would say, nominates like a president. At the lease that I'm talking about and referring to, we've got, a committee. So you've got a president and a vice president, the president kind of regulates the schedule throughout the year of work days and kind of who needs to come to the club. And every weekend during season, we've got, you're on lunch duty. So on Saturday, you cook lunch for everybody, whether you're cooking a pig or whatever you're cooking, it's your deal, your weekend. So it just kind of makes it like a more so a community or a family.
Yeah, that makes complete sense though. And then the regulation fact is obviously help out with a healthier herd and more mature bucks, and it just all makes sense. And it's kind of interesting to hear the management that's on a lease like that. It's super interesting.
It is. It's good for it. It teaches you too. I grew up in that club, so it kind of taught me a lot about what to do, what not to do, and how to judge. And
right. Is it pretty much like a tight-knit little family? If you shoot a deer and you need help tracking, people help you out?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's super cool. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit of information on your deer hunting techniques, styles, and strategies. Jay, you want to take us on a hunt with Heather?
Yeah, let's go on a hunt, and then Dusty, I'll turn it back over to you for 10 Rapids to close the show, if that's cool.
Awesome.
So, Heather, I asked you about thinking about a memorable deer hunt that you might have had, and goes back to, from your first hunt to your last hunt that you've been on. And I would like to go on a hunt with you to listen in and have you describe that in detail about how it went down, so we can feel like we were right there with you. Where are we going to go on this hunt?
I would say I was actually thinking about that. And the one that kind of stands out in my mind, I would say was about 7 years ago. I was actually on the lease that I was, or the hunt club that I was just talking about with Dusty. And it was funny because we're all hanging out and eating supper the night before, and, everybody's joking about where they're going to go and where they're pinned in. And I kept moving my pin back and forth. And I was like, I have a feeling. I just have some sort of feeling that, I need to second guess myself. And I did. And I put that in. And so that morning I woke up and it was cold. Well, it wasn't cold. I would say it was probably, I don't know, in the 50s, low 60s maybe. So it was a good opener. This was in November, so it was right around the holiday season. Got out, and this is a box stand that I'm hunting. And this is actually one of the stands I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of the dark. This is the only stand that kind of gives me chills walking into it because it's way back in the woods. Obviously, when you walk in a deer stand early in the morning, you try to use less amount of light as possible. So I was walking to the woods, getting ready, and it was like I had an eerie feeling. I got in the woods, I got up there, got situated, put my gun up. At the time, I take a minute, I sit there, I breathe, I say little thoughts to myself, and then it gives me kind of like a relaxed feeling, so to speak. And in that moment where I got my relaxed feeling, I look up, and it's probably 10 minutes to light, I would say, or 10 minutes to shooting time. And I see something. And I sat there to myself and I said, to be sure, he's not out here that soon. Well, I look up and I'm sitting there and I've got my eyes on him the entire time, and he is not moving. I'm like, well, it's a deer bush. So I go on and I'm getting myself ready and I'm putting my binoculars up, and he's still standing there. And it was almost like not necessarily a ghost sitting there watching me, but I was like, dude, that thing has not moved. Lo and behold, it was the deer I'd saw before. So it was, I don't know, probably, I would say 25 minutes, 30 minutes after light. I could not hold my gun still to save my life. I was sitting there shaking just because it was like reality that this was all, I moved my pin for a reason. I had a feeling. It's all coming together, and it's right here in front of me, and I can't stop to breathe. So I've got the gun up. I pull the trigger. I drop them. I get everything ready, get the four-wheeler. I've already called people at this time, said, look, it's happened. I'm done, and they're like, you're kidding me. You've got to be joking. You've got a horseshoe up your butt. I'm like, no, I'm good. So I go to the rack. We hang them up. Everything's good, taking pictures. I go home, or go back to the camp, and we eat lunch, and we're all sitting there talking. And I said, you know what? I had such a good feeling I'm going to go back to the same stand this evening. I take a nap. I wake up. I get ready. A little bit colder, so I put on more stuff, and I'm going back into the stand. And I'm just smiling, and at that point, I'm not even thinking I'm going to see anything. I don't really care if I do. I'm just going to enjoy the time and kind of go from there. That exact spot that the deer walked out that morning, it was, I would say, not even 45 minutes into the hunt, here comes another one. And he is in literally the exact same spot I dropped that deer this morning. I get up and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is unbelievable. And at the time I was shooting my 25-06. Right. So I get up, I put it up, I turn the safety off. And it's just like in that motion of me putting it up there, all of a sudden my nerves hit me again and I just start shaking like crazy. And it's, you can ask James, the nerves that I get the moment I put whatever weapon it is in my hands. I mean, I could be sitting there watching the whole time and I'm fine. But the moment that weapon goes in my hand, my nerves are ridiculous. It is unbelievable. I mean, it literally is like a light switch. And so I'm sitting there trying to breathe and calm myself, pull the trigger, down he goes. And my dad was on another piece of property hunting. And he comes in after we've got that second deer and he's like, I just don't get it. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't get it? And he's like, you haven't been here in a few weeks. I mean, like, what are you, psychic? You know, and it's just that moment. That whole day together. I mean, there's not many details to it, but it was just, I had that feeling. I don't know why I had that feeling that night before. And it didn't have a camera on it, Dusty. There was nothing there that I could tell any, you know, in terms of what was actually there. I'd seen some deer, but they were kind of further off. But I got two decent sized bucks, and it was a great day. It was right before the holidays, you know, and so I kind of wrapped all that up, and I was in the mode now. I'd kill my 2 bucks on that lease, so I couldn't kill any more.
Right.
And it was that actual week, you know, we actually stayed there for Thanksgiving. And I got into the stand, and I was more so going to hunt, you know, just to kind of see what I could see and keep people informed of what was moving and what was around. And before we got in the stand, I remember my daddy telling me and my brother, look, we need some meat. We need to fill up some of the freezers for, you know, family and so-and-so. And I said, okay. When he told me that, I was like, all right, he wants meat. I'm going to get him meat. So I went to another stand we had. We call it the tower stand because it's 25 feet up. So it's pretty up there. And it was probably, I don't know, I would say probably 30 minutes to dark before you could stop shooting. And I had a bunch of doe in front of me, a whole bunch. So I said, what the heck? He wants meat. Let's go for it. Boom. One goes down. Yeah. Boom. I drop another one. I dropped 3. In that time, my phone is constantly ringing. And he is like, what are you doing? I mean, he can hear me. And he's probably, I don't know, 700, I would say 800 yards away in another stand. And I said, you wanted meat? I just dropped 3. He's like, oh, my God. What are you, like, in a competition? And I said, no, I'm not in a competition. I'm just dropping deer. And the last one, I didn't realize it until he came out there because it was way dark. So we were going out trying to flash him and pick him up on the four-wheeler. And he said, that was 245 yards on your 3rd shot. And I said, well, I guess you learn from the best. So that whole week for me was just like, I mean, it was like everything was just dead on. And right. It was nothing huge. There was no trophies taken out of it. But it was just a memory that we always talk about in my family. And it was one of those things that I can always just remember in the back of my head. Like, you remember the week of Thanksgiving? So, right. Again, I'm not a trophy hunter, but it's a great story. A lot of activity, a lot of triggers pulled, and it was a good event.
Just a darn good week of deer hunting.
It was just a good southern, down home,
right,
enjoyable week, and that it doesn't get any better for me.
That's awesome. Great story. Very nice. Let's turn to the 10 rapid fire questions.
Go for it.
Ask you these questions or prepped you for these anyway, have we?
You have not. Kind of nervous.
What is your best hunting tip?
Best hunting tip. Enjoy yourself.
Very good. You one thing that you cannot go to the woods without other than your weapon. Is there any lucky charm or anything like that you take to the woods with you?
My knife.
What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
I can't. The words I can't.
Very good. That's a very good one. If Heather, I'm not going to ask how old you are today, but Heather of today, what would you tell the Heather that was 20 years old, knowing what you know today?
Continue to be you and don't look back and don't think twice about what others say or what they feel is best for you. Do what's best for yourself. You are you.
Very good. You meet a stranger at a show or at an elevator in the hotel or the lobby. They ask, what do you do for a living? What do you say?
I'm a territory sales rep for a beverage carbonation company.
Very good. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Coffee.
Coffee for breakfast.
We like to slip that one in there.
Yeah.
You get your own billboard anywhere, and it's got a blank canvas. What would the billboard say?
Oh, Lord. I do me best. That's my hashtag for everything.
Nice.
Very good. I say the word successful. Who's the first person that pops in your mind and why?
My mama. She is unbelievably strong, independent. She has taught me who I am and how to be independent and to completely take care of myself without ever relying on anybody else. She's got a beautiful home, beautiful things. She's healthy.
Very good. What's a day in your life look like?
About 5 cups of coffee, no sleep, probably about 3 hours of sleep. My phone is tied to my hand and my ear 24/7. I'm in sales, so I'm on the road 24/7. I'm always looking the next day to make my schedule for the next day and add it on. Talking to friends constantly, trying to do the next volunteer event or what I need to do for hunting or for the Dixie Deer Classic. It's a jack of all trades, master of none style. I mean, it's just one thing after another. It never really stops. Obviously, I have my daughter, and she goes to school and pick her up from school and dance some nights. I don't watch TV and sit down and do all that. We'll go outside in the afternoons. She'll play around. I might shoot my bow or hang out with her. She rides a razor. We like being outdoors is a huge part, obviously in the afternoons. But then from there, we do the house stuff as normal. I cook supper every night and put her to bed, and the computer opens and work starts again.
Very good. What's a hunting day in your life look like?
I would say, again, a lot of coffee, waking up, getting in the stand for the most part, depending on what property or where I'm at. Depends on my day activity after I get out of the woods. A lot of times we might have things to do or, stands to clean or build or if it's a weekend where there's a lot of people around, me and my brother might throw some clays during the day or play around, and then you get in the woods in the evening. After that, everybody looks forward to sit down supper. We all eat supper, hang out, play cards, and you do it again.
Well, you killed
Nothing
it.
Extravagant.
You killed this one. That's my 10 rapid-fire questions. Very good answers.
Thanks.
Nice job. Well done. So, Heather, where can we find more about you? Like, if we're curious, we've listened to the show, and we want to go check out your social media stuff. Do you have anything going on over there?
I've got my personal pages. I don't do a lot personally for myself on social media.
Okay.
You've got my Facebook page and my Instagram and Twitter. I manage, obviously, the Dixie Deer Classic social media. That's me behind the scenes, and another helper of mine that does the Dixie Deer Classic Facebook. I also do a company called To Be Outdoors that we just started.
Okay.
I've got theirs, and I've got another Instagram page. There's quite a few Instagram pages. Personally, you can find me though on Facebook or Instagram under my Heather Shepard.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. Well, Heather, this has been an honor and an absolute pleasure, and I'm glad we were finally able to put this together. And I know that last time you had a little voice issue going on, and that
I'm still dealing with it.
You're still dealing with your voice. It sounded great tonight, by the way, and thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on and opening up and letting us know about who you are and what you're doing down in North Carolina. It's just been a great show.
I definitely appreciate it, Jay and Dusty, for having me on.
So you and Heather got into it a little bit about you were digging deep for how the club works down there in North Carolina.
Yeah, just curiosity, and it's something that we really hadn't touched base on how a lease club works, and I'm glad that I went there and got some information about that, just because it sparked my interest and maybe it answered a few questions for somebody that's looking to get involved in a lease with other hunters. And it sounds like it's one big family of doing something they love and are passionate about, and I like the rules and regulations they got on it so that they manage their herd a little bit better. And it just sounds like a great program that Heather's involved with there on her lease.
Mm-hmm. And here's a little known fact, but I don't know if I've even shared this with you, Dusty. I actually was a member of a hunting club in North Carolina for 2 years.
No kidding.
From New Hampshire, yeah. So I think I hunted there, 3-4 times. Didn't get down a ton, but went down with our friend Bob Dubong from a previous episode. Remember Bob, the one that fell out of the tree stand? Well, he used to belong to a deer hunting club down in North Carolina, just outside of Raleigh, probably very close to where Heather is. And I belong to that club too. And I always had a good time. Shot a bunch of does, and actually never put my sights on a buck while I was down there. Yeah, but the rules were interesting, and the way it was managed and the things we had to do to manage the land was very swampy, very thick. So they were always cutting lanes. A lot of labor intensive work to be done on all those properties.
Yeah, super interesting.
Yep. So anyway, that's my story, and thanks to Heather Shepard for joining us on the Big Buck podcast and telling us what she's got going on down there. Do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
Yeah, we do, Jay, and I hear this a lot. That
the Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
People talk about food plots and they get discouraged by them, and it's real simple. And I'm going to kind of break this down in a fashion that somebody can understand a little bit better and be able to do this and be successful with what they're doing. A lot of people think, oh, you need a big tractor and a 3-point tiller and you need to go out there with this tractor and make food plots. Well, you know, the truth is that as long as you got sunlight getting to the ground and you got a garden tiller and you got a piece of chain link fence and maybe a 4-wheeler to drag it, you can go out there with your garden tiller, haul it out to the woods, back of your truck, unload that thing on your small trailer, whatever you can haul it on, unload that garden tiller and spend 2 or 3 hours with the garden tiller working up through maybe a 4-wheeler trail or back in a corner where the grass is maybe a little bit taller and, you know, where the farmer cannot plant and maybe it's the edge of the field or you know, in the deep timber. As long as you can get that sunlight down to that seed bed, it'll germinate and produce a food plot. But if you can go in there and you can till up a 5-foot wide, 100, 200 foot long strip, you've got yourself a miniature food plot and a food source come them late winter months that just might give you that success rate. So you go in there, you till it up, maybe you spray it first, you till it up, and then you take and spread your seed. And then if you take a chain link fence, and I've actually got a really small piece that I can drag by hand behind me. It's got a 2x4 on the front of it. And it's about 6 foot wide, and it's got about a 6-foot piece of chain link fence hooked to it on a piece of paracord that I can actually physically drag myself through the woods. So, you know, food plots are not all about big, expensive equipment. You can do it on a smaller scale with a garden tiller and a hand spreader and a piece of chain link fence to kind of roll the dirt back over the seed. And it's pretty simple. So just keep that in mind that you don't necessarily need that big monstrous piece of equipment to do a food plot. You can do it with smaller equipment. It takes a little more time, a little more effort, but if you're willing to put in the effort, you'll reap the reward.
That's a cool idea. I didn't really think about getting a little garden tiller out there and a little chain link. I mean, it doesn't take much really to put that stuff together, does it?
No, it sure doesn't. And it's just another way to take your hunt to the next level by having that small food plot. And, you know, you may not see activity on it right away, but I'm sure once them winter months set in and they're starting to get desperate for a food source, it may just give you that 25, 30-yard broadside shot on that buck you've been chasing all year.
When would you plant that stuff? Like what time of year? Right now, or would you wait a little bit?
There's different seed varieties. You know, obviously right now is more of the grass, the clovers, the alfalfa, the ryegrass, whatever type of grasses you're wanting to plant. Right now is the time. You know, obviously if you got a large growth of undergrowth weeds and if you go into the woods, and something I'll touch base with a little bit here, you go in the woods and you see that grass is established and you're seeing quite a bit of grass undergrowth in the woods and you're seeing that the grass is knee high by now in most places. Well, that means that there's sunlight getting down to that soil. And if there wasn't no sun, there wouldn't be no grass. So just take that in mind. If you walk in the woods and it's bare and it's nothing but trees and leaves and moss and it's all just bare ground, there's no greenery growing there, the odds are there's not enough sunlight to germinate a food plot seed. So keep that in mind. If you go in, you find you a good 4-wheeler trail that's got tall grass on it, and you can get in there and spray it. And just go to your local co-op or Tractor Supply or tractor, you know, a farm ag store, and you buy yourself some Roundup. You know, all the instructions on the label. You know, a gallon of generic Roundup, which is like a Buccaneer. A Buccaneer Plus is generic Roundup. It's usually around $45 for 2.5 gallons. You mix it up an ounce per gallon. You put it in a backpack sprayer or a small hand pump sprayer. You go in, you spray the weeds, give it 3 or 4 weeks, let them weeds die off, and then you're able to get in there with your tiller and just go ahead and work that dead grass or weeds right into the ground. And you know, a 12 fertilize will mostly cover any kind of food plot that you're going to put down. You know, obviously a soil sample would be the way to go, but if you're just doing something small and you can pick up a bag of pelletized lime or powder lime and just sprinkle lime over it, just to neutralize that pH a little bit or raise it a little bit and get it where the acid's neutralized in the soil. And you know, most alfalfa, orchard grass, any kind of timothy or rye or whatever kind of grass you're going to plant or clover, it's all pretty much, you can broadcast spread it. You know, you don't want to saturate the ground with seed, but put quite a bit of, let's say I'm doing 100 foot by 5 foot. I'd go in there with probably, I'm guessing 20 pounds of seed and spread it and lay it down pretty thick. And once it starts growing, you'll see the deer start to trim it off. And if it gets real big and you think, man, that looks really mature, you can go in there with the weed whacker and just trim it up and let that new growth come on. And it really provides some great nutritional value for your whitetail deer throughout the warmer months. But if you're looking for something more in the winter months, get a hold of Doug Ostrava at Horny Buck Seed Company and get yourself some seed that's got winter radishes and turnips, and get that in the ground and get you some winter tonnage growing.
Gotcha. Very nice, man. It's got me thinking of some different spots that I think I want to try. Put some of the Horny Buck seed stuff out and see what I can do with it.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Oh man, this has been a fantastic show, and thank you so much to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. And I got to say thanks to all our sponsors because I truly do believe in these products. Thank you to Advanced Takedown Tree Stands. Thank you to Covert Scouting Cameras. Thank you to the Horny Buck Seed Company. Obviously, Doug is such a wealth of information about how to get things to grow out of the ground when it comes to deer food plots. And thank you to the Euro Hanger, and thank you to once again, to Morse's Sporting Goods. So those are all our sponsors, and we back them up 100%. Dusty, where can we find you when we're not hanging out here in the studios talking about deer hunting?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com, and I try to promptly answer all emails that come through to me. You can look me up on Facebook, Chubby Tines Outdoors, and on Instagram and Twitter, @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, best place is jay@bigbuckregistry.com. You can also find us on Facebook, and that's facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're on Twitter, twitter.com/bigbuckregistry, and on YouTube at youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. Kind of see the theme here. If you're listening to the show, you can listen to our podcast on iTunes. And if you are listening on iTunes, please subscribe and leave us a review if you find the show and you find it interesting. You can find us on iHeartRadio. You can find us on TuneIn Radio. You can find us on Blueberry and Libsyn and Stitcher. All different ways you can listen to the show. These are all different apps you can get for phones or on your computer device. And last but not least, I said YouTube earlier, but you can still listen to our podcast on YouTube in its entirety because we take that audio, we make a small video out of it, and we put it on YouTube so you can listen to the show on YouTube in case you don't have access to those other podcasts. Our podcast appears on YouTube each and every week. And the other thing we have going on YouTube is we are posting any interviews we do, any product reviews we do, any live shows that we've been doing. And don't forget, we're doing the live shows on Thursdays at 8:30. And we're posting all that content not only on Facebook, but the videos are now appearing on YouTube as well. So you can watch our live shows where we review and go back and talk to previous guests on our show and get them back and into the studios so we can see where they live, how they live, all that kind of stuff. See what they look like because you can't really see what somebody looks like on audio. And you can listen to every single podcast that we produce. I think that's it. I think that's everywhere we're at.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay. I'm Dusty Phillips.
And I'm Jay Scott.
And this is the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.